What's up, people? In this video, we are going to do Charles Fuchs. Here you go, a video from Jordan Peterson. Thoughts why nice guys finish last. I love Jordan Peterson. I had his audiobook, was it 12 Rules for Life? Listened to that book probably about 10 times, as I would like do cardio, I don't know, earlier in the year. Amazing book, highly recommended. Like, wow, audiobook is great. Listen to it a little bit sped up just because he talks fucking slow, but incredible book. The guy is on point, like, cannot recommend him enough. Not sure what this video is about nice guys finishing last, but he's one of those people, like, I honestly, like, don't think he's wrong about anything. You know, like, occasionally you'll find people where you just agree with them on everything, and in my case, that is, yeah, he's one of them. What is his channel? Motivation Madness. Okay, here we go.
If you ask a disagreeable person what he wants, say, or she wants, they'll tell you right away. They know. It's like, this is what I want, and this is how I'm going to get it. But agreeable people, especially if they're really agreeable, are so agreeable that they often don't even know what they want, because they're so accustomed to living for other people and to finding out what other people want and to trying to make them comfortable and so forth, that it's harder for them to find a sense of their own desires as they move through life. And that's not, look, there's situations where that's advantageous, but it's certainly not advantageous if you're going to try to forge yourself a career. That just doesn't work at all. And so even though on average men and women aren't that much different in terms of their levels of agreeableness by the group, if you go out and you look at the extremes, they're very different. So all of the most agreeable people are women, and all of the most disagreeable people are men. And the thing is, the extremes are often what matter, rather than what's in the middle. And so one of the ways that's reflected in society, by the way, is there's way more men in prison. And the best personality predictor of being imprisoned is to be low in agreeableness. It makes you callous. Now you might think, well, what's the opposite of compassion and politeness? And the answer to that is, I think it's best sort of conceptualized as a trading game. So let's say that we're going to play repeated trading games. And if you're very agreeable, then you're going to bargain harder on my behalf than you're going to bargain on your own behalf. Whereas if you're very disagreeable, you're going to do the reverse. You're going to think, I'm in this trading game for me, and you're going to take care of your own interests. Where an agreeable person is going to say, no, at best, this is, at worst, this has to be 50-50, but I'd like to help you every way I can. One of the things you have to be careful of if you're agreeable is not to be exploited, because you'll line up to be exploited. And I think the reason for that is because you're wired to be exploited by infants.
Interesting. See, how interesting is this? Oh my God, this guy's a fucking, like, actual gem. You know what I mean? It's rare that you find somebody who you know, can, like, actually apply fucking psychology to the real world, you know, to, like, your actual life, right? All this, like, watered down mainstream bullshit about, like, there was a study that said this and blah, 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 and that means maybe in this situation might be blah, blah, blah. But, like, this guy straight up tells it how it is. You know, it gives you, like, actual practical real world advice. I don't know what this talk is about. He's like, I'm getting the vibe that this is like a talk at a university to help them, like, after they graduate or something, is kind of the vibe I'm getting. Am I right on that? I think I'm right. Anyway, it doesn't really say. Yeah, I mean, his book, I guess, like, honestly, I'm just going to plug his book this entire time. Like, it's interesting from the first chapter, like, actually the first chapter. He's got this whole thing, he talks about lobsters, and, like, he draws all these parallels between, like, lobster behavior and human behavior. He just goes over so much shit in his book. It's so fucking good. But he talks about, like, aggression in lobsters and how a more aggressive lobster will, like, do all these, like, primitive behaviors, and if it wins a lobster fight or something, it will become more dominant and it'll attract more females, and the females just, like, throw themselves at this male lobster, which makes it even more dominant, and it just, like, goes on and on and on like that. Whereas the opposite, if you have a lobster that, like, loses a fight, like, it'll develop, like, all these health problems. Even if the two lobsters were, like, fairly evenly matched physically, one of them will deteriorate after losing a fight, and the other one will, like, get, you know, whatever, fucking superpowers, super lobster powers or whatever. There's an interesting book on this called The Winner Effect, which is kind of talks about the same concept, how, like, you can take an average animal or something in the wild, and if it wins a fight against a weaker opponent, even though it's basically average, it's not, like, genetically fucking superior or anything, if it wins a fight against a weaker opponent, it'll, like, that will give it much more strength, and it can, like, increasingly win fights against bigger and more dominant opponents until it's like, fucking king of the jungle or whatever. As far as like the whole like agreeableness thing, I could be totally wrong. I think this is something that comes with maturity. The only reason I say that is because I used to be very agreeable. I'm clearly not as agreeable as I used to be. I think I'm still pretty agreeable. But I just found that as I got older, I had less tolerance for like just being taken advantage of. Also, I might have had some experiences that kind of, when you hang out with Israelis, like you can't be a doormat, man, because they will suck you dry. They actually will suck you dry, especially like in the army. Oh my God, I don't even want to get into it, but like, it's like the army is basically like several years of your life to see who can like manipulate their way into doing the least amount of work possible. That's just what it felt like sometimes. Obviously, I went there to work, right? I went there specifically to contribute. But you see that a lot of people don't actually do that because it's conscription, it's mandatory. So like a lot of people try and get out of as much as possible. And like, yeah, sometimes you do try to get out of shit because like enough is enough, And then I went to go work with like Israelis who were like specialists in sales, so like fucking 7 years of my life around people whose job it is to manipulate other people into doing something. So like that also maybe, helped reduce my agreeableness, I'll say.
And so that just doesn't work so well in that actual world. And one of the things that happens very often in psychotherapy, people come to psychotherapy for multiple reasons, but one of them is they often come because they're too agreeable. And so what they get is so-called assertiveness training, although it's not exactly assertiveness that's being trained. What it is the ability to learn how to negotiate on your own behalf. And one of the things I tell agreeable people, especially if they're conscientious, is say what you think, tell the truth about what you think. There's going to be things you think that you think are nasty and harsh, and they probably are nasty and harsh, but they're also probably true. And you need to bring those up to the forefront and deliver the message. And it's not straightforward at all because agreeable people do not like conflict. Not at all. They smooth the water. And you can see why that is in accordance with the hypothesis that I've been putting forward. You don't want conflict around infants. It's too damn dangerous. You don't want fights to break out. You don't want anything to disturb the relative peace. And if you're also more prone to being hurt physically and perhaps emotionally, you're also maybe loath to engage in the kind of high intensity conflict that will solve problems in the short term. Because it takes a lot of conflict to solve problems in the short term. And if that can spiral up to where it's dangerous, which it can if it gets uncontrolled, it might be safer in the short term to keep the water smooth and to not delve into those situations where conflict emerges. The problem with that is it's not a very good medium to long-term strategy, right? Because lots of times there are things you have to talk about because they're not going to go away. And the advantage to having a well-socialized disagreeable person is that they really don't let much get in their way. So if you can get a kid who's disagreeable socialized, that person can be quite the creature, because they're very forward-moving in their nature and very difficult to stop. But if you don't get them successfully domesticated, tamed, roughly speaking, by the time they're 4, their peers reject them. And that's a big problem because your job as a parent is to make your child socially desirable by the age of 4. Like you want to burn that into your brain because people don't know that. That's your job. And here's why. It's easy if you think about it carefully. So you imagine you've got a 3-year-old child, so sort of halfway through that initial period of socialization, and you take that child out in public. Okay, what do you want for them?
All right, before he gets into that, I could honestly just watch this video and not talk about it. Like, do you need my additional commentary on this? Like, is this not enough for you? What did he say? Okay, about like conflict resolution. So honestly, as I was watching that, I was like, maybe I am actually still pretty agreeable because I hate conflict. I do not like to I try to smooth the waters if possible. One thing that I am, I guess, always trying to be more conscious of is if there's some sort of like social violation that I have to call it out immediately, right? I think that's something that like, I don't know if a lot of people struggle with that, but that's something that I have made a conscious effort to. Here's the situation, right? Let's say you're out somewhere at a gathering or whatever, you're fucking in the world somewhere, and you feel like somebody does something inappropriate and it like negatively affects you socially. They make fun of you, they fucking whatever, or like fucking take a piece of chicken off your plate, like whatever it is, and then you don't do anything because like you're just kind of caught off guard and you don't want to cause a scene, and it's kind of easier to just like let it go and like move on with your day. But then you go home and you like can't stop thinking about it, and you're like, fuck, I should have done this, I should have done that, I should have said this, I should have stood up for myself, and you beat yourself up because of that. In my experience, I don't want to say it's always better to call that out, but in pickup, there's this thing called an AMOG, right? Alpha male other guy, which is basically like, in pickup, like you're out, you're socializing, you're talking to people, because that's where women are, is in fucking social situations. And occasionally there will be another guy who is like threatened by you or like tries to like assert his dominance, and it's just basically a dick, right? It's called amog. Like he's an amog, and that's called amogging, right? So basically, one of the potential solutions to deal with an amog is to call out in clear terms the specific violation that he is committing as he's committing it, right? So like, I don't know, whatever, fucking says something. You just say like, hey man, like why are you saying that? Like, are you trying to impress me in front of are you trying to impress these girls by being a dick? That's not cool, man. You know what I mean? Something like that, right? I'm just making this shit up as I go along, but that's basically the idea. And and the point is that when you call it out for actually what it is, it takes away the power, because it makes it very clear what the person's actually doing, and it's fucking low value to try and impress somebody else by being a dick. Straight up, it is. And if you're able to do that, like in your life, in the real world, I think it's a very valuable skill to be able to do it, like to recognize it for what it is, because those things are unpredictable. It doesn't like happen all the time where somebody like is a dick to you, like in a social situation. It just doesn't happen a lot, you know? So if you are able to react quickly when it does happen, I think that's good.
To the child, who cares about you? What do you want from the child for the child? You want the child to be able to interact with other children and adults, so that the children are welcoming and smile and want to play with him or her, and so the adults are happy to see the child and treat him or her properly. And if your child's a horrible little monster because you're afraid of disciplining them or you don't know how to do that properly, then what they're going to do is they're going to experience nothing but rejection from other children and false smiles from other parents and adults. And so then you're throwing the child out there into a world where every single face that they see is either hostile or lying. And that's not something that's going to be particularly conducive to the mental health or the well-being of your child. If your child can learn a couple simple rules of behavior, like don't interrupt adults when they're talking too much and pay attention and try not to hit the other kids over the head with the truck any more than is absolutely necessary, then and share and play properly, then when they meet other kids, the kids are going to try out a few little play routines on them, and that's going to go well, and then they're going to go off and socialize each other for the rest of their lives. Because that's what happens, is that from 4 years old onwards, the primary socialization with children takes place among other children. And so if the kids don't get in on that early, they don't move into that developmental spiral upwards, and they're left behind. And you can imagine how terrible that is, because a 4-year-old will not play with another 4-year-old who's 2. But a 5-year-old certainly will not play with a 5-year-old who's 2, right? Because the gap is just starting to get unbelievably large. And so the kids start out behind, and then the peers leave them behind, and then those kids are alienated and outside the peer group for the rest of their life. Well, those are the ones that grow up to be long-term antisocial, right? They're already aggressive. It doesn't dip down. Now, what happens to normal boys, roughly speaking? Imagine the aggressive 2-year-old types. They get socialized, so their level of aggression goes down, and then they hit puberty and testosterone kicks in, and bang, levels of aggression go back up. And so that's why males are criminals between the ages roughly of 16 and about 25. So, and it matches the creativity curve, by the way. It's so cool. If you look at the spike of creativity among men, 16 to 25, and it starts to go down, criminality matches that absolutely perfectly. So that's quite cool. So, and so the testosterone levels raise the average level of aggression among men. It's more dominance than aggression, actually, and testosterone is by no means all bad. And then it starts to decrease at about age 25 or 26, which is usually when men stop staying up late at night, stop drinking as much, develop a full-time career, and take on the burdens and responsibilities and opportunities that are associated with a long-term partner and family.
Oh my God, how interesting is this? Am I the only one who thinks this is like, maybe it's because like I already have such a positive opinion of this guy from listening to his book fucking 20 times or 10 times or whatever, however many times I listen to it. But this is just like, how, like, I don't know, I never hear this shit. I'm also not a parent, and I don't fucking Google like how to be a good parent, how to raise my kid, although I probably would if I fucking had kids. But yeah, like honestly, when I was watching that, like what he said about how like, okay, so 2 things. Number one, I was watching that and I was thinking like, because I grew up, I was thinking about myself, obviously. I grew up and I was kind of like, I don't want to say I was a loner, but like I wasn't like one of the cool kids, really. Shocking, I know. Wasn't one of the cool kids, wasn't like really in like the popular group. Yeah, periodically, like whatever, you go to a new place and like make friends with the popular kids and like you're the popular group occasionally. But like normally in school, that was not the case for me. I wasn't like a loser or anything. I had my friends, but like wasn't super social and friendly with everybody. So I'm wondering like, why was that? Also wasn't very aggressive. I got in fights, but like what kid doesn't get in fights? Like if you're a boy, like, somebody fucks with your shit sometimes, like you got to do something, you know what I mean? But I was wondering, I was like, because I kind of think of myself not like as an antisocial person. I love people, I love talking to people, but I don't have like a lot of structure in my life that like pushes me towards being social with other people. Is it because I travel all the time and I fucking bounce around? You could make that argument, and I guess I did stay in hostels for a long time, which would make me more social than normal. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe by social he just means like like domesticated. Maybe that's what he means. I'm pretty domesticated. And the second thing was where he was talking about creativity going up with an increase in testosterone. So I'm wondering, does that mean that higher testosterone levels are associated with higher levels of creativity? Because if you can artificially increase your testosterone levels with testosterone replacement therapy. Fucking inject testosterone, there's all these other tricks like boost your testosterone, but like the fucking want to like 5x that shit, you fucking inject a little testosterone every week and that's it. I'm wondering if that would also make you more creative. I'm kind of thinking that maybe it would. I think maybe creativity and confidence might be linked. I think that actually might be, he didn't say what else it's linked to, but I wouldn't be surprised because what is creativity? Creativity is essentially the confidence to let your mind wander and to take that wandering mind and create some sort of either like art or business or like create something out of it, right? Hence creativity. So I'm wondering, like, is it the added boost in confidence that contributes to the creativity by way of testosterone? Maybe. I don't know.
And so also that's the development of what I would call predatory aggression, because I also think that the agreeableness distribution is probably something like predatory aggression versus maternal sympathy. It's something like that. So if you look at other mammals that are predators, because we're predators as well as prey animals, if you look at other animals like bears, the male bear has absolutely nothing to do with the raising of the infants. In fact, the female bears will keep the male the hell away because he's likely to kill the infants and maybe even to eat them. So there's no maternality at all in solitary male mammalian predators. It's really useful to investigate the viewpoints of people who have opposing views to yours, because they'll tell you things. Not only will they tell you things you don't know, they'll also tell you how to see the world in ways that you don't see it. And they'll also have skills that you don't have, that you could develop. So for example, if you're an introverted person, it's very useful to watch an extroverted person, because the extroverted person has ways of being in the social world that aren't natural to you, that you can use to improve your toolkit. And if you're disagreeable, one of the best things to do with disagreeable people, especially if that's alienating them from other people, for example, because it can, people treat you like you're a selfish, arrogant son of a, maybe that's because you are. It's like, okay, so what do you do about that? One of the most promising treatments, let's say, for that is get the person to do something for someone else once a day, just as a practice, and learn how to do it. Maybe you can wake the circuit up, if you think that it's lying dormant in you, which is probably right. I think we have a very wide range of propensities within us. Some are switched on, genetic propensities, some are switched on, but I think that if you put yourself in the right situation or walk yourself through the right exercises, you can switch some of these other things on as well. But it takes work and dedication and discipline. I would say, generally speaking, if you want to adapt your...
You know what I like about him? I just realized what it is. It's that the way that he talks, he will kind of like, he like, remember I said in the beginning, like, he does not like fucking study spamming, saying like, well, in this study at the University of blah, 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 they said this, and that means this happens. No, the way that he talks comes from, I think, he's got a lot of varied concepts in his mind, possibly as a result of, like he said, exposing himself to a lot of people that he doesn't necessarily agree with. So, like he said, when you expose yourself to somebody you don't agree with, you will kind of, if you're like, open to accepting, if you're empathetic enough, let's say, to like try and understand things from their perspective, that act of empathy, I guess we could call it, is giving you an additional frame through which you can look at the world. And when you have all this like abundance of frames in your mind, you can take one frame that, let's say, on a random example, like, I don't fucking know, like ancient Roman fucking soldier dedication to the military, fucking random shit, right? You can take that concept of like dedication to like nation and fitness and fucking sacrificing your life, blah, 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 and you can like apply that to like some completely unrelated area, like fucking, I don't know, like knitting fucking mittens for your grandchildren, whatever. Do you understand? Like, the point is, like, you can take a concept that's like normally for something over here, and you can try and look at other things through that concept, basically. And the reason I think how I guess why I think that he does that is just because the way that he talks, where he said something now, he's like, what do you say? Like, there's no agreeableness circuit, like an electrical circuit that you flip a switch and it turns on and now I'm agreeable, right? That's not like, you're not going to find a physical circuit anywhere in somebody's body. But that seems to me like that's a frame of like, he knows something about electricity. He knows that there's this thing called a circuit, and he applied that concept to the agreeableness, disagreeableness factor. And I think that like flexibility of thought is something that can be very useful when it comes to trying to like explain the world around you, which if you read his book or listen to his book, I think he does very well. What else did he say? I don't remember what else he said.
Yourself properly to life. You should find a niche in the environment that corresponds with your temperament, right? You shouldn't work at cross purposes to your temperament because it's just too damn difficult. But having done that, then you should work on developing the skills and viewpoints that exist in the space opposite to your personality, because that's where you're fundamentally underdeveloped. And that way I think you can extend out your temperamental capability across a wider range. And to me, that's roughly equivalent as bringing a richer toolkit to each situation. So if you're hyper extroverted, you should probably learn to shut up at parties now and then and listen just to see what's going on, to see if you can manage it. And if you're introverted, well, then you should learn how to speak in public and to learn how to go to parties without hiding in the corner and saying nothing to anyone. And if you're agreeable, then you need to learn how to be disagreeable so people can't push you around. And if you're disagreeable, you need to learn how to be agreeable so that you're not an evil son of a bitch. So, and the same thing applies even in the conscientious domain. It's like if you're too conscientious, you need to learn to relax and let go a little bit. And if you're unconscientious, it's time like get out the Google Calendar, man, and start scheduling your day, right? And beat yourself on the back of the head with a stick until you're disciplined enough so that you can actually stick to something for some length of time and not living in absolute squalor, which is something that would characterize someone who's very disorderly, for example, because they don't notice. It doesn't bother them, disorder. It's like maybe they can see it, but it doesn't have any emotional valence, and so it doesn't have any motivational significance. So the other thing you might want to think about too if you're choosing a partner is try not to choose someone who's too distant from you on the temperamental variables, because you're going to have a hard time bridging the gap. It's hard for an introverted person and an extroverted person to coexist. And it's really hard for an orderly person and a disorderly person to coexist because they will drive each other nuts. Why don't you pick up? Why are you so obsessed by it? That's the basic argument. So it's useful to know about your temperament so that you can negotiate the space with your partner as well. And I don't think you should try to find someone who's exactly the same as you, because then you don't have the benefits of the alternative viewpoint. But you got to watch it because you may hit error.
This guy's all over the place, huh? But in a good way. In a good way. When he was talking about that just now, I was thinking to myself, because I'm on the disorderly side of things, you could say. Like I have, you guys can't see this, but I have, I'm in this room right now in this guest house. It's very Spartan, right? I'm like, I have this table, I have a chair, I have a bed, and there's like a bookshelf over here, or like a dresser, nightstand, bookshelf, whatever you call it. So there's really like, I guess I could put my clothes on that bookshelf thing, which is actually not a bad idea now that I think about it. I could like fold them and put them over there, but instead what I have them over here in a massive pile, like fucking 3 feet by 3 feet, just a pile of clothes. Like my clean, and they're clean, but they're not folded. It's just like an actual pile of clothes. And that's my clean clothes. And then over here, I have a bag with like my dirty clothes, like on the exact opposite side of the room. And I was thinking when he was talking about that, he's like, yeah, a lot of people, like they're disorderly, doesn't really bother them because it, just doesn't bother them. So they need to learn to be more like orderly. And I remembered something interesting when he said that, which is that when I joined the army in Israel, like you have to go on marches, right? You're in the field a lot, which is basically like take this fucking heavy bag and like walk around for fucking 10 hours a day and like sometimes run up a hill and shoot. That's pretty much like what the field exercises are. That's basically what it is. And when you walk for an extended period of time with, let's say, an extremely heavy bag, it's going to fuck up your shoulders and your back, and like it's just going to hurt. It's not comfortable. You have to deal with the pain, fine. But what I would do sometimes when I would get out on the weekends is there was a masseuse that I would go to in Tel Aviv. He would charge me like, because I was a soldier, I'd show up in my uniform and give me a discount. He'd charge me like fucking, I don't know, 100 shekels. Was that like $25 or something? $30, let's say, for an hour massage, which is like, it's like half price basically. And I remember one time I went there, because I would go, I went maybe like 6-7 times. Anyway, one time I went there and like, you know how it is, you get a massage, you go into the room, you like strip down to your underwear, and then the guy comes in and starts whatever doing the massage. So like I took off my my clothes and I just like threw them because I'm whatever, I don't know, I don't know if I threw them on the floor, if I just like whatever, I didn't put them like neatly and organized. And he comes in and he like chided me on it. He was like, what are you doing? Don't just throw your shit everywhere. Like what did he say? He's like something like Masha yesh bifnim yesh b'chutz, something like the other way around. basically like the way things are on the outside is how they'll be on the inside, right? So like basically if your room is organized, you'll be organized. If your room's a mess, you'll be a mess, something like that. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. Has nothing really to do with this, but yeah.
Irreconcilable differences of various sorts. And I've seen that most particularly among couples who are high and low in openness. That's a rough one. And also high and low in conscientiousness. That's another rough one, because they just cannot see how the other person sees the world at all.
Love it. Is this guy not fucking the most on point person you've ever seen in your life? Like, who do you know who's like got more actual fucking wisdom than this guy? I don't know. I love. He deserves his popularity and success, in my opinion. You know, definitely go get his book. I don't that I don't have time to read, but I kind of don't have time to read. But if I'm out for a walk, which I do to kind of clear my head, or if I'm doing cardio, which I currently do several hours of cardio a week, I don't mind to put an audiobook on. I don't have headphones right now. But anyway, like, fucking get the audiobook and listen to that shit straight up. Like, it's amazing. He's amazing. This has nothing to do with nice guys finishing last. I guess this is just like clickbait. But yeah. Jordan Peterson for the win. I've read his other book, or I tried to listen to his other book, Maps of Meaning, but it's very verbose is the best way I can put it. Like the audiobook is like 25 hours or something ridiculous, like 38 hours. Some like ridiculous like amount of like, it's just too long. Like he says in like 20 sentences what he could say in like 2 sentences, which in my opinion in 12 Rules for Life, he does much better. Okay, so anyway, who told me to do this? Charles Fuchs. Thank you, Charles Fuchs. You guys have any other recommendations for videos or YouTubers? Let me know. Leave me a comment. Peace.